Hey guys, and welcome to the PP. On today's episode, we have with us the Table Podcast. That's pretty much it. I always do the introduction like that, but I really just wanted to start the entire episode with like, what is it that you guys do? I know on almost like every single episode, you guys are sponsored by Face It Ministries, which is a huge part of what you do.
Yes.
But I'll just go ahead and let you first talk about what the Table Podcast is.
Well, I'll let Micah. You should probably answer, and Curly, because I didn't start with the table. I was actually kind of the outsider. They had other people on, and then I kind of jumped in. So I'm gonna stay silent for this part and let y'all just kind of.
Well, for the Table Podcast, the way that it started was kind of, I'd just been watching podcasts for a while. It was about a little over 2 years ago now, but I just started watching YouTube podcasts and people that just seeing clips and things like that, and I'm like, man, I wonder what it would take to do something like that. And then I started looking it up. I was like, oh my gosh, that's a lot of money. That's a lot of stuff. But I was like, man, you know what? I do know that I can just try. I can just start. Yeah. And so I had mentioned it to Curly, and God really put it on my heart to start something. And he put it in my heart to bring kids and bring young people and young adults to the table. And that's what it started at. And I based it off of a verse talking about come taste and see that the Lord is good. Yeah. That is what the table is based off on, is that when you come to the table, you're allowing yourself to hear the word of God. Yeah. And so that is where
what do you mean by feel it in your heart to start that? Because I know a lot of people say, oh, I feel led to do this thing, or like I just felt it in my heart, or like what does that mean?
I think it came more of like a passion, something that came in me, like it was like, oh, I'm passionate about this. I'm already obviously passionate about my relationship with Christ.
Yeah, I'm trying to ask in a way of like other people who are because I don't know who is watching or listening to this. But like when they have a feeling towards something, like what is that exactly? How would you describe that? Like, how do you know?
I feel like it's kind of like a heart pull. There's just times, even just like when we were starting it, I really didn't have a passion for it, just like Micah did. But the more we did it, we started, just recently we had someone at our church, the lady came up and said, hey, well, me and my daughter were actually on the way to Texas, and on the way back, anytime we drive, we listen to the Table Podcast. And
that's awesome.
When we were listening to it, she said that I put this one you guys talked about, like lust, on it, and kind of just fleeing away from lust. And when I put that on, I was telling her to listen to it because she's got a little boyfriend now. And then whenever they got back to school, she told her boyfriend, hey, I just listened to this podcast, and I want to create some boundaries in it. And so just like,
we were like,
small little testimonies like that.
She's like, how old again?
She's probably like 14 years
Yeah, I
old.
was like, at 14 years old, she's having that
awesome.
kind of mentality. So I was like, wow.
And so it's like just like little testimonies like that, which is like, okay, we are making a difference. Whether it be 14-year-old or whether it be just someone older. And so the more you do it, the more you go, okay, well, God's hand is on this, and there's something here.
Yeah,
that's really awesome. It's really weird because you like the people in front of you. You have a direct relationship with, but you have a very indirect relationship with the people on the other side of the screen.
Yeah,
and you can affect a group or like a classroom, which I'm sure we'll talk about in just a second. Yeah. A classroom of students, maybe 30 at most, or maybe like the bleachers of however many fit in there. But like you could affect millions online, and it's weird because they have more of. I think it's called. There's a word for it, and I think they came up with it just because of like the way social media is now. But people can have more closer relationship with you than you do with them, like almost like they know you because they've watched hours of you and they really know who you are, which is podcasting.
Yeah, you get that personality that they take a liking to.
It's really weird, but it's like that's why it's so awesome. It's like super encouraging to hear just one person be like,
kids that come up to the school at us at the school, and they'll say, "Hey man, we listen to your podcast
every week." Yeah,
like, wow,
man, that's cool.
It's so weird to hear in person though. You're just kind of like,
oh my god, people actually
listen. Why? Really listening? You're like, is anybody really watching this? You know, do they care?
Yeah. Because I was walking in the mall in Hammond, and I was walking out of Foot Locker, actually, and there was two guys that walked in. They went, hey, that's the dude from the Table Podcast. And I went,
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, we listen to your podcast sometimes. Like, okay, cool. You probably just saw a clip or something. There ain't no way they actually watched me. There ain't no way.
That's so
but
funny.
like for real, like they probably did click on the video and watch it. So it's like
You
it's
never know.
insane. You just never know who's listening. You really don't.
I'll say this too, talking about, because again, I wasn't a part of the Table podcast at first, but when you're saying about feeling in your heart and having that, that pull, or what does that mean?
Yeah.
I first started doing like a podcast and having an idea for something like that during 2020 when COVID hit and, everything was shut down. Face it, we meet in schools, so our livelihood, our jobs was going to schools and sharing the gospel. We were invited in. It's a student-initiated, it's a voluntary club. That's how we're legally able to go in and preach the gospel. And so when COVID hit, we were unable to do that. And so all of a sudden it was like, no ministry opportunity. We didn't get to do anything, so we were like, well, we got to get a presence online, So we started doing a thing called Livewire, where it was Face It online, and we would have students listen, that kind of thing. But I was driving down the road one day, and it was like I was wrestling with my own self and with God of just like, bro, like we can't do anything. I want to preach. I want to share, and I have a love for film. I have a love for audio, and so I had seen podcasts, and that's when podcasts were already getting there, but it was growing. Now 2025, it's
still
like
growing.
It's still going
majorly.
So I was like, man, I want to do that, and so I was like, I want to get the cameras. I want to just try, just like Micah and Curly said.
Yep.
And so I started. It was the Reality Check podcast. It's not a podcast anymore. I don't really do it. It's there. I have it. I still have the subscription, and I'll pop in because I still get downloads every now and then on certain episodes.
Yeah.
Cool. But that's how I got involved into it, and then Mike and them started one, and I didn't want to do another podcast on the side because I was already doing one, but then God kind of moved me in that area, and it kind of opened up a slot, and I was like, hey, I want to jump in on this too,
How long did it take him before he jumped on board?
Like 2 years.
It was 2 seasons, so we did 2 seasons of the table before he popped on.
You were
So this is-
slacking.
Yeah, it was the 3rd season he
I
finally
wanted to let
hopped
them
on.
do all the pioneering,
Yeah.
and then I just jumped
When
in.
he saw all
reaped
the
the
we're
benefits.
still
fruits coming
pioneering.
from it, he was like, I want to be a part
I
of
want to
that.
reap the benefits.
I was like,
No,
yeah,
we're
he's
still
smiling.
pioneering.
Yeah,
for
we're
sure.
definitely
We're
pioneering.
still pioneering, but it kind of, like Stephen was talking about, it was something that was on my heart of like, I just already love to preach, and I really like to talk. So I was like, why not start a podcast? You know what I mean?
Just like, oh my, it's connect.
Yeah.
It's
It's
making
connecting.
sense.
It's connecting.
And then we were
Finally.
wrestling with, I was wrestling too, though, of like, okay, but what's the why behind it? Though?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it just to like, uplift myself and
Yeah.
draw attention
See,
to me?
here's
So
the-
that was an issue too.
Whenever even now, so I still don't fully know my
Yeah.
why. And any business thing or any motivational person will be like, you got to know the why. You got to
Yeah,
know your
yeah, yeah.
direction. You got to know what, where you're going.
Yeah.
And there's even a great quote by I can't remember what the guy's name was, but I know who he is. But it's, you can bear almost anything if you know your why, essentially, is what the quote boils down to.
Right.
There's another quote that I've used in almost every single podcast at this point, and it's you don't always have to know what direction to go in, but you do know what better is, and better points you in the right direction.
Yeah.
And I use that kind of as my why in a bit for the podcast.
Yeah.
So I just knew, like you, that I needed to start this thing. And as I'm starting this, I can see where I want to go at some point, right? Like I want to be able to do it full time. I want to be able to pay people. There's other ideas that I have. How do I get there?
Yeah.
Well, that road in between is where you're kind of figuring out your why.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And it'll all kind of start falling into place.
Yeah,
So
it's a journey for sure.
I have this weird idea of you don't need to know your why, but you do kind of know somewhat of what it is. You do know what better is.
Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
do know what direction you're heading in.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
for sure.
And I
It's
feel you on
whenever
that
you
for
really
sure.
find your niche of
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
Whenever you for us, we love, each of us preach, and so we love preaching the gospel and talking about Jesus, and whether it's in person or whether it's through a camera. And so it's for me, it's, man, I love preaching the gospel. I love talking about Jesus.
slightly jealous of y'all's niche niche
you
in
were
the
telling me
sense
that on the phone.
in the sense of there's another quote, it's niches make riches, or niche. It just sounds better if you say it that way.
Yeah.
But, when you're fishing and you fish for a very specific fish, you're going to go to a very specific area. You're going to get a very specific bait. And it's going to be the same thing for a YouTube algorithm.
Yeah.
You are going to craft an idea. You're going to get a thumbnail. that's going to capture a very specific kind of person, and you're going to fish, and you're going to whatever you title it is going to basically be like you casting it out. It's going to send it over into this pond. And these are the specific kind of fish I want to catch. And if you get them to watch an entire thing, you know, you've captured them. So like the idea of like the niche is how you can grow really, really good, which is what I'm a little bit jealous of in a sense. Because I don't necessarily have a niche per se. But it's weird because neither does, you know, guys like Joe Rogan, although, you know, granted,
he is Joe Rogan.
He's just famous.
He's got money like crazy.
So yeah, it's a little bit jealous of like the niche thing, but I think mine kind of comes over time. So in a sense of, you know, like obviously this episode's about Jesus. There's an episode that we did about blind soccer. There's an episode about, it's blind soccer with our head coach for our national Paralympic blind soccer team.
Oh, wow.
Sorry, it's a lot of words.
I would mumble
But
that
we'll
up.
go from like that to something like this to an episode of like building an entire studio out of pallets. You know what I mean? Like those are all just like general interests. It's never one thing. But I've noticed through watching the videos, there is that it's like a common thread.
There's a common thread,
Yeah, and I don't know what it exactly is yet. I'm kind of coming up with like it's almost like adult field trips, if you will. Like exploring things in a creative way and with an open mind.
I think of
that's my why. That's it right there. They
think of
just
like
found it out.
The old show, remember it was Dirty Jobs or whatever, where the guy,
Mike
it
Rowe.
was all centered around jobs, but it was different jobs that were dirty. You know what I'm saying? And so like you got to do something different every time. But it was still had the same theme, you know. And I think the more you do your podcasting and your niche is gonna just kind of find itself, and then you're gonna be like, oh, I really like doing this, you know.
So that feeling you had though, one of the reasons I wanted to ask too is I get that. But the viewers on the other end, they're gonna refer to it as whatever it may be. Like they might call it like the Holy Spirit told me this. They might say my conscience just felt this way, or I felt so strongly, or like there was a pull, or like I felt it in my heart. There's so many different ways to say it. The way that I started this was like it was just like a seed planted. And like that seed grew so much to the point where I could not ignore the size of it. And like I was crazed. I was like, I don't know what it is. I just have to do this thing.
There's a function in your soul.
And then as like I start doing it, like I said, that why that you kind of figure out along the road, pieces just started falling into place. I'm like, okay, podcasts are growing. I have the stuff to do video and then the audio. But yeah, the puzzle pieces kind of just start fitting together. The hard part is sticking with it and sticking it for the long run.
Absolutely. For me, I think, like you said, that it was the seed. I would see like little shorts of people talking on a mic in front of a camera. And that's what really started it for me, because I always wanted to set up something nice and make it look good and like actually talk on social media, but I didn't know how, and I didn't really know what I was doing. But I just had this like, man, I want to do that. Like, man, that would be really awesome to do. And like you said, the more that I just kind of time went on, I was just like, oh man, I just want to do this. I'm going to start. And that's why I started with a phone, and I started with 2 mics from Amazon that were $50 each. And we just started, and we were just like, you know what, let's just do it. And we saw a little bit of traction of people just saying to me and Curly, hey, we listen to y'all's podcast. And we were like, really?
Why you care? You know?
Yeah, man,
there's a saying when I was a coach, it was, are you in it or are you into it? And that's kind of the difference. It's like when you have that and you're into it, you're not just like in it, kind of like showing up to church. Are you into it? Or are you just in it? Like you're just showing up.
And it really started from, because we found these group of kids at our church, our local church, and they really started serving Jesus through Face It. So we go into the schools and preach, and these kids started coming to Face It every week on Tuesdays. But they started coming to our local church at our youth group. And I told Curly, I said, man, we need to disciple these guys. We need to sit down with them. We need to talk to them and like weekly. And we met with 5 of them for a small group, and we called it the Table Small Group. So we were at we're sitting in a circle, and we're just talking, and we called it the Table Small Group. And then I told Curly, I was like, man, we could call that for our podcast.
Yeah.
And that's how it kind of just happened.
Yeah.
And
Well,
then
the group grew too.
and the group grew from 5 kids to 35 to 40 every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And it was just like, whoa, like what's happening? So, and
That's
then, and we had the podcast for those students and for young adults and for the church and for things like that. So that's really just how it all kind of happened.
We had went to a end of year conference whenever at the beginning of this year, and it was one of the speakers. They had said something. They were saying, I have 5 kids, and my wife could be cooking the meal, and I could be at the table, and 4 of my kids could be at the table. And yes, we're happy, but we're missing 1 kid.
Yeah.
And it's the table's not complete until everyone's here. And so, kind of driving that into a more spiritual thing of like, hey, God's happy that we're all here, but He's saying, hey, there's still room at the table for 1 more.
Yeah.
And there's always going to be room for 1 more at the table.
Just 1 more. That's it.
Just
Yeah,
one
just
more.
1 more.
And
Not
so-
2,
more.
just 1.
Just one.
Just 1 more, but then when they're there,
Or 5.
1 more.
Okay.
Always one.
The
one
table
more.
just keeps
one
getting
more
bigger
and
and
one more.
Get bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
For sure.
It kind of leads into one of the questions I had was like, in podcasting, a lot of people nowadays, everybody has a podcast. Everybody wants to have a
Yeah,
podcast.
exactly.
That's also like the new thing. Everybody has that everybody has that urge like, man, we should start a podcast.
Yeah.
And it's just like a group of guys sitting down, just shooting the breeze, talking about whatever it is.
whatever it is.
Yep.
Some are obviously a little more well crafted, I'd say.
Oh yeah.
More serious than
definitely.
others. Yeah.
But that leads to my question. It's like, in like a sea of similarity, like what makes you guys stand out? Like what separates you or makes you unique and like interesting? Like personally, like from you thinking about what the viewer is interested in, like what makes you unique? Why would some random person in
I want to hear.
Idaho want to listen to you?
I would say, honestly, now this is just, of course, a humanistic. This is our answer, but what makes us stand out. I've asked Mike and Curly that too when it comes to podcasting, the similarities, and we have to do something that establishes us. And the way that I think of it is that it's genuine. We're real. We're authentic. If we're saying what we're preaching, we're actually practicing what we preach. So if we're saying, hey, we're going to battle lust and we're doing this, we're not going to be doing what we said we're not doing. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not saying that we're perfect and that we don't sin and that we never make a mistake, because that would be a bold-faced lie. But I think that there's genuineness and there is a true passion for the Word of God. So for the Table podcast, our main goal, just like Curly was saying, is that we want to get people to the table. We want people to know the good news and to know.
I mean, I'm at your
Jesus
table and I brought you here. So,
Exactly. You brought us to the table over here. But
you brought us to
yeah,
your table.
I would say it's the authenticity. It's realness. When people see our podcast, I would hope. Now, again, I'm just speaking in what I would hope that the person in Idaho watching would think is that
don't know where that came
these
from
guys
either.
are these. But it is funny. You go on like Buzzsprout, and you'll be like somebody in Idaho watched your thing, or Illinois, and you're like, what?
Philippines.
Yeah, I'm like, how? How do they even find us?
Yeah,
you
it's
know?
crazy.
But I think it's the genuineness. It's real. Like these guys are. I can see that God's moving in them.
When I started, there's people that were like, oh man, why don't I do something like this? Because like they might know me through. So it's 6 degrees of separation. You're 6 degrees, or I'm sorry, you're 6 people from knowing everyone in the entire world.
Yeah.
So like and I can tell you right now, any NFL head coach,
Yeah.
I am 4 people away. From a phone call.
Yeah.
If I like really tried and worked for it.
Yeah.
You're 6 degrees of people. That's the saying. I don't know how true it is,
But I believe that. Yeah.
But whenever I started, somebody who knew me through someone else was like, oh man, why didn't I, I could do something like that or this and that. The only difference between me and that person in terms of like similarity or uniqueness was that I'm doing it.
Yeah.
That's the difference.
Exactly.
So like, I'll say this now for anybody who's listening or watching.
Yeah.
The difference between you and them is that you're doing it.
Yeah.
And that's it. It doesn't matter how good you are.
Yeah.
How
agree.
bad it is,
Yeah.
how much of a struggle it is, whether you succeed or fail, depending on how you see success or failure.
Yeah.
The difference is that you're doing it.
Yeah.
You're just showing up.
Yeah,
It's
you
kind of
actually set it up and did it.
it's the difference between what I said earlier. Are you in it or are you actually into it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like what are you going the distance?
Yeah.
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 I think it
That's-
also goes to like when we added Steven on, we had like he was saying, like a real talk, and we're not chasing to go viral or to be this huge podcast. If it blows up, amazing, that's awesome, right? But that's not like our goal.
Yeah.
And so and I feel like a lot of people, a lot of times they say, well, hey, I'm going to post 3 episodes, and they might post one and it'll get 100 views, or the next one they post and it has 38 views. And then they say, oh, well, I'm not doing anything. And so then they just give up.
Yeah.
And it's because they're chasing being viral and blowing up and trying to make all this money off of being YouTube famous. But when that doesn't work, then they just give up. And it's kind of like what you're saying. What's your why for it?
Yeah.
Are you doing it,
I love that because another word for it a lot of people call it is clout chasing.
Yeah.
And I do anything and everything to avoid that completely.
Yeah.
It's really weird. It's hard to explain because it's like I tell myself like, yeah, I could have took a niche. I could have done just one thing.
Yeah.
But would I have done that long term? Probably not.
Yeah,
I have too many other things that I'm interested in.
Right.
And there's ways to like edit your videos for retention.
Mhm.
There's ways to like, beat the algorithm or like you'll find this from like famous YouTubers where like they want to make a video, but they can't because they're relying on it for their income. So they can't make that video. They need to make what people are going to watch.
Exactly. Yeah.
And for me, that's not success. For me, I want to be able to make the thing that I want to make that will impact people in a positive way, whatever that is, whether it's a laugh, cry, excitement.
Yeah.
And I don't ever want to get stuck just making things for views and making content for that.
Well, and I'll
reason.
say just because, and it's not like I know you this very well, but just from watching some of your videos on YouTube, and you obviously have like a love for just film and video, and you do weddings, you do all kind of business stuff, and then you have a podcast, and you're into
the podcast
this.
doesn't make any money.
Right,
Everything else
so
I do funds this.
There's a love for that. So you're, I know for a fact, Micah and I and Curly and even you watch countless hours of YouTube on how to make your podcast better and what kind of mics and these lights and then it's not just because it's like I just want to make it better. It's like you almost kind of get excited about like I love just watching a video on a certain light. I'm like a big nerd, bro. Sitting there, I'm like, man, this is sick. It's an Amaran 200X. And
this was only $400.
But it's like, and then my mind's just going all these ideas because I'm into this, So yeah.
I haven't reached that place yet where I'm just watching hour videos of just lights, but hopefully one day I'll be able to catch
It's
that.
more of like, because I love, I'm a very visionary person, so I can visualize things. I know where I want our podcast to look like, where I want to go, kind of like we were talking about earlier. You can kind of visualize where you want to go, but you're just like, man, how do I make that happen? I'll figure out like this promo video I want to make for a podcast or like this thing that I want to talk about. So I'm like, how can I interest somebody for them to them to listen to me talk about this specific topic through a different video. And I'll like try to think of a way to make that video and make it engaging and and it just excites me. Like I'm like, man, like I want to do that.
The process is fun to me.
Yeah.
It's just enjoyable just to watch you go from year 1 to year 3 and you're like, man, look how far we've gone. What we've acquired.
It's not to be
just cool.
cliche, but it truly is. It's just like one step at a time.
It is. And it's just fun. It's enjoyable for
Most podcasts actually don't last 10 episodes.
Yeah.
Most people who, like I said, like everybody has a podcast now. It's true, but like most of them don't even last 10 episodes. And if they do, then they usually like go on a hiatus, and then they'll be like 2 years later, and then
It's just they run out of topics to talk about.
I'll see like comments on people's TikToks on like or I'll see comments on people's TikToks that they're posting of their podcast, and all of them are, they need to make podcast equipment more expensive because this is so stupid. Like that's what I see all the time.
And the barrier to entry is very, very low. Obviously, like this stuff that they're seeing now doesn't look very low. It looks expensive, which it is, but it's come over just a long amount of time. Before I ever recorded my first episode, I had tons of equipment because I was doing side jobs filming weddings. Like I had my day job, and then on the weekends I was filming weddings, and at night I was editing all of them. So like that's where a lot of my education and learning came from.
Even just trial and error and just learning.
Even film sets. Like I'd get a call to be DIT for a film set in New Orleans, and then I just learned whatever I possibly could.
All right, well, fill me in on what a DIT is.
It's a data imaging technician.
Yeah,
Look
see,
at that.
That was my guess.
that's for the viewers right there.
That was
Because I could tell
that
you
was
the
Curly's
guy in
guess, I can
Idaho was
guarantee
going, "What's a DIT?" Because I sure was.
So with that, Micah so eloquently said in y'all's episode, Mature Leadership Part 1, The
Yeah.
Myths of Leadership,
Yeah,
he ended it with, what is your why behind your what?
yeah,
And why do you really live for Jesus?
yeah. So you want us to tell you why?
Yeah, I want to know your answer. You gave it to us.
I was actually
You gave it
forced.
to
I was-
us. So you guys who watched the Table podcast,
Yeah.
who had to
go.
come up with your own answers, now here's Micah.
Yeah.
Well, who
You
wants to
wanna
go first?
I'll go first.
He doesn't have a why.
To be fair, you did kind of already answer it with like the whole podcast.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, yeah, that's good.
No, my why is because we like we said, we recently partnered with Face It Ministries, the podcast, and that's where we go into the schools and we preach the gospel to students. And my life changed because I went to a Face It club.
Yeah.
My freshman year of high school, Micah had actually invited me, and Stephen was preaching, and he preached the first message I ever really truly heard, and it was called "Stay True to Yourself." And when I heard this message, I wasn't applying it to my life, but anytime that I would do something wrong or mess up, I would always remember the words, stay true to yourself, stay true to yourself. And so me and Micah really started connecting more. I started going to youth. He invited me to youth and going to church. And the place I was at, I wasn't a Christian, or I wasn't, my family, I didn't grow up in church. My parents weren't pastors, nothing like that. We maybe went to church on Easter and Christmas, and that was really it.
It's most people.
It's most people, right? And so going to this, it was different. It was a whole life change. And going to youth and going to church and accepting Christ into my heart was a whole different realm of stuff. And so when I started walking it out, though, I noticed certain things in my life. Like I used to start every sentence with a profane word or end it with a profane word. And then God took that away from me, and I haven't said a profane word. Not one has come into my mind in 9 years, because God took that away from me, where I don't need to talk like that to fit in with anybody, or to fit the niche that everyone else is doing, you know? And so now I have the opportunity to go into the schools and preach to students that may come from a broken home, because I have parents that are divorced and it was really messy, and talk to them about the stuff that I used to do and the stuff that they may be doing right now, where, I mean, a lot of students, their prom is tonight, and after prom comes the after parties and what they do at the after parties. And so we're encouraging them, like, hey, you don't need to go to an after party to do this, you know, make wise choices. And I already did that. And so my why for doing ministry and living for Jesus is because he changed my life.
Yeah.
I was going down a place where I was going straight to hell in a sense, you know? And so it's, when he changed my life, it was, hey, now I'm on this road where I get to tell people about what he's done in my life and lead them to that.
Yeah.
Do you think you ever would have done it? Do you think you would have ever done it without Jesus?
What, life?
No, that change from the direction you were heading in.
No way.
Yeah.
I think it's so crazy how Jesus changes people's lives.
Yeah.
I mean, we were talking about Logan Paul and them earlier, but they had that guy, George Janko, on their podcast for so long.
Yeah.
And after a little while, George Janko started accepting Christ. He accepted Christ, and he started seeing a little change in that. And he left because of certain things that were going on. They were making ridicule, and they were making fun of his faith. And he left and went and made his own podcast about Christianity, and it's blowing up right now.
Yeah.
And he's not walking the same way that Logan and them are walking anymore. And so, I 100% agree with, hey, there's no way that I would be able to do this without Jesus. 100%.
Yeah, I mean, I can let you guys finish your
I was gonna say, just
like, I really wanted to I have one, like, the current state of Christianity to go into, and that's like a perfect segue, but I really want to hear y'all's other answers
sure?
first.
Okay,
yeah.
I mean, I'll just say, because our life is much different than Curly's. You know, growing up, I grew up in a pastoral home. You know, so church was like our life and still is our life. And so, a lot of times there's a stigma when it comes to pastors' kids. It's like, they're either the worst of the worst, or they're just like goody two shoes, never did anything, and it's like that kind of deal. And so,
Yeah, it's one or the other.
Yeah,
that's
one
pretty
or the
much
other,
it.
And so that was something that we navigated growing up. And Micah and I both were not like the party guys and profanity and all that. I grew up, I say it and it's hard to believe for people, but I mean, I accepted Christ when I was 6 years old. I remember the day. My dad was outside painting. I was talking to my mom in the kitchen about heaven, and so she had said, the only way to heaven is through Jesus Christ. And little 6-year-old me was just like, mind blown. And so I was like, well, I want that, I want to make sure that and it was more of like a fear thing of, like, I want to make sure that but I went out there and it stuck with me. And I've served God my entire life. Now I've sinned, I've done stupid things, and I have lots of things in my closet that I go, man, I would hate for anybody to know that I struggle with this or have struggled or struggling. But my why behind the Table Podcast, behind Face It, behind, just ministry in general is that, I want to reach those that don't have the life that I got privileged to have. I have a mom and dad who are happily married, who love Jesus, who have, instilled in me those values at a young age, who pushed me to do things. And so, and that all stemmed from Christ, and he literally is, and it sounds corny, but he is my best friend, like I literally talk with God every day. I had this crazy weird thought of, I don't know if it was on Facebook or something, where it was just talking about, at the end times when Satan will be thrown into the lake of fire, and this whole, is that it? Is he gone? Is life over for him, and those who go to hell? And I just got so bombarded with that thought of like life at all, completely gone. And I was like, man, to be separated, they say hell is to be completely separated from God. And like I was driving, I just went and got my like 7 brew coffee, I'm just living my life. And then all of a sudden I got this super deep thought of like, what happens if you die and you didn't have that and you are completely gone and life ends? What does that even mean? What does that look like?
Just ruined your coffee.
Ruined that coffee.
It scared me.
Coffee's
But
like, whoa.
I couldn't help but think like,
Coffee's
man,
heavy.
to not have
You
God
need to
in
go
my
to
life.
a new coffee place.
Yeah,
because
I'm
7
telling you,
brew
something was in that coffee that day.
Something happened.
But I'm serious. Like it was just
Yeah.
a mentality of like, to do life without God, I don't know what I'd do.
Yeah.
My life is nothing without him, And so for the viewer, if you were on the fence, you asked the question, which I'm not trying to jump ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. No,
But
you're fine.
if that would be my sales pitch, man, is that having Jesus with you it's everything.
Yeah.
It gives you purpose. It gives you that fulfillment. And man, to better someone else's life and to know that there is eternity and you get to spend it with the Creator, who is the author and perfecter of your faith, who knows everything about you. I want to commune. I want to do life with that. I want to. He has carried me through thick and thin.
Yeah.
You want other people to have what you have,
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Oh yeah.
absolutely.
to experience the coffee from 7 brew.
Yes. Yes.
Coffee, the heavy
super
coffee.
deep thought coffee.
Yes. Well, I'd say for me, the
We're
why
not sponsored by
is-
7 brew.
No,
And
not
if
at
you're
all.
watching
Not at all.
this,
I mean,
you're
it'd
more
be
than
cool if they-
welcome.
That would
If
be
they did
great.
sponsor,
I think they
good.
come from a Christian organization.
they actually do. Yeah,
I think
7
it's
Brew is.
Look into
'cause
that.
It's like the 7 brews.
Yeah, 7.
The 7 brews
yeah.
is the number of completion. I
Yeah,
think
so.
that's where it came from. But pretty
Editor,
cool.
check that out.
Check that out, editor. He's on the other side over there right now, checking it out. No, but I'll say my why just to sum it up because you kind of said I literally said it on our other podcast. But I'd say the why behind my what is when I started serving Jesus, I was a junior in high school. Really, I grew up in a Christian home, but I really wasn't serving Jesus. I kind of just knew about God, and I just would go to church, and
Go through the
it was
motions.
I was going through the motions. And when I found Jesus, I was in a classroom. I had a dream. And on the piece of paper that I looked up from my desk, I was kind of like a sleep paralysis dream. I don't know if you ever had sleep paralysis. It's
I haven't, but I know what it is, and I've always wondered what it's.
The worst
very
thing.
creepy. So you can like hear everything going on, but you're dreaming at the same time. It's really insane. It's kind of like a lucid dream kind of thing. You feel like
Yeah.
you can move and do whatever you want. It's kind of creepy, but I'd had one of those types of dreams, but I was looking down and this piece of paper, it was like bright white, and I flipped it over and it said the Great Commission. And I knew the Great Commission was to go into all the world and preach the gospel.
Where were you headspace at the time?
I was
But-
taking a math test.
Yeah.
No, as in like,
Like, yeah, where were you at? No, like in your mind, like.
were you super into church, or were
Yeah.
you just kind of like
I
a
mean,
little on the
I was back and forth.
backside of the hill,
Yeah, I
backsliding?
was back and
I
forth.
was taking a math
I was-
test.
Wait, I mean, I was. I was.
Taking a math.
But no, yeah. I
You
was
failed
kinda
that
back and
test, didn't
forth.
you?
No, I actually passed.
Okay,
I
all
passed,
right.
which
You-
is kind of crazy.
You fell asleep during the
Speaking of-
test and still passed. That's
Yeah, no,
incredible.
I fell
Full
asleep. I
study
finished
session.
early and
Sorry, I
fell
didn't mean to.
Derail.
It's
Derail.
It was the
Steven's
coffee.
fault.
7 brew.
It was a 7 brew coffee. Yeah. No, I was really in my life at that time. I was kind of back and forth. I really wasn't serving Jesus completely. And so I'd had this dream. I saw the words, the Great Commission. I knew what that it meant. And so when I looked up from this desk in the classroom, I wasn't in the classroom anymore in the dream. I was in a church. And they had these lights on the stage, and it was just on the stage. The whole room was dark, and I heard this like symphony of like music, and I felt this presence come over me from the bottom of my feet to the top of my head. I felt it. And when I woke up, there was this bell ringing in the dream as this symphony of music was playing. It was insane. I've never heard this type of music since then. It was heavenly. I can't even explain it. But when someone touched me to wake me up, I woke up and I looked at the guy, and he was like, "Hey man, we got to go to the third hour." And I was just like, "Oh my gosh, like you have no idea what I just experienced." Like I could feel the Holy Spirit all over me. And I walked out of that classroom, and ever since I walked out of that classroom, I was never the same. And my why became, who doesn't know the truth of who Jesus is and his presence?
Here's
And then
like
that's
just
when it
two
changed.
things. Two things come to my mind. One, that was the greatest math test I'm sure you have ever taken in your entire
Dude,
life.
I'm saying.
The
Yeah.
second is that dude who tapped you. You had to just immediately just put your hand on his shoulder, and you're like, brother,
Let
you
me
know
tell
about
you
Jesus?
About
Listen.
God.
listen to this.
Dude, I
You're
wish I
not
had
gonna
time.
believe it.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I had time. I didn't. I was like, hey, he was like, "Hey, we gotta go third hour." He just walked off. I was like, "What?" I was
Yeah,
like,
I hope
"What
you're
just
still
happened?"
friends with him, because he's like, this guy's crazy.
Yeah. Nuts.
Yeah, I
But
was
yeah.
trying. I was like, it was a really good story. I was listening, but I was like, I could not get that out of my head. Like, this math test is incredible. Like, where is this math test? I must take it.
For real.
I must take it.
I guess while we're kind of like still in this mood, I'm gonna jump to that sales pitches.
Okay.
And you know what? I want one from each of you, because there's 3 of you.
Okay.
So 3 things: a sales pitch for Christianity, for not just Christianity, but the brand specifically of Jesus Christ.
just Jesus.
Not what people see Christianity as today, right? Because there's always a brand
Yeah,
associated to everything.
Yeah.
Just like the Table Podcast is a brand in of itself, right?
Yeah.
The thing behind the why, or like what it is. But the brand of Jesus, we'll say it that way. Give me a sales pitch. One thing from each of you on buying into the brand of Jesus. Why should I do that?
Okay.
I'll start with you, Micah.
Who?
I called you Micah, Curly.
No, okay,
Curly.
good. I didn't know if you were talking
Yeah,
about
the guy with the curly hair. I called
Yeah.
Micah. That's crazy.
Just call him Patty Mahomes.
okay.
He loves it.
And all the students in the school call him Patty
Every
Mahomes.
school we go to,
Literally.
they call me
I
Patrick.
can see it.
I don't.
But
I don't
anyways,
see it
I don't
at all.
Sales.
it.
Let's just sales pitch.
Sales
Sales
pitch.
pitch. Go
Okay.
ahead.
Just one thing.
Well,
just one thing.
I gotta get into character real quick.
Buy,
Alright.
buy,
All
buy.
right.
Just one thing. One thing.
You like comic books?
I do.
Okay. Have you ever heard the story about how the hero died for the villain?
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's a
That's
good-
why you should follow. What hero do you ever hear that dies for the villain?
Okay. All right.
Okay.
I'm intrigued.
That's
Mhm.
actually
Bam. Then you start reading the story, and you're like,
How did-
"Whoa,
Whoa.
bro died." Then you read a little bit more, you're like, "Bro came back to life." Right?
Okay. All right.
Oh man, I hate this. This is not. No,
I don't know what
You
to
hate
say.
it
I'm
because
just
he
saying,
came
I
out
mean,
with a.
Jesus is the way, the truth, and the light. No one comes to the Father except through Him. If you want to get to heaven, you want to experience eternity,
Dang it, you
then
took
Jesus
mine.
Christ is the way. I mean, He's the author and perfecter of your faith. He's who created you. So that would be my.
Okay.
That's a lame sell. I'm sorry.
No,
That
bro, you
was-
just hit scripture. I'm over here doing like
Ah,
comic
but it's
book
still it's
pitches.
Yeah,
to buy
his-
in. I mean, the viewer could be like, "But I just don't really believe it." So I mean, I need
Yeah,
Micah.
bro.
Yeah, yours
Okay.
pulled up so many like just debatable questions.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay. Okay. So I could ask you, what does the word "good" mean?
I don't know. I would have to. I'd probably just do like a
Definition.
What does it mean to be
Webster Dictionary.
to be good,
good?
to
Yeah.
do the right thing. I would
Okay,
think,
but
or a
s-
good thing is like something that you enjoy or like.
Okay, so what makes it good though?
The feeling that it gives you or leaves you with, I
Okay.
would say. Just
Okay.
as like a quick.
Okay. So in my point of view, it just from growing up, I grew up noticing that things are good and bad. You notice that from a young age, right? So what I would say just to the viewer, when you look at things that are good in life, the Bible talks about that our good deeds are like filthy rags to a holy God, is what the Bible says in Isaiah. And anything that we do good in life compares nothing to what God is. And so that would be my pitch. To be good in life is to know God, because God is good.
So I'm not saying it's a competition, but
Curly wins this one.
yeah, I think
Curly
we all
I
know.
thought he did good. I thought that was really good.
I
was like,
Yeah, I
we
was
had that
genuinely
much
surprised.
time.
I was
Yeah,
like,
because
I
when
didn't
he
know we
said
had
that,
Whoa.
I was like,
dang. I was like, dang, came up that quick. I was like,
I know.
All right.
I didn't know how much time we had.
He cheated though. I mean, he got that
Yeah,
from
it was
somebody
like
else. But
Well, explain a little more, because I want to hear more.
it's like, take all
Okay.
my money.
I might actually
Take
give my life to Jesus now.
We've been praying for you for a while.
Thanks, man.
I got that from a rap song.
Yeah, no, it's
I don't even care
Christian
where
rap
he
song.
got it
Is that
from.
KB?
It's
Yeah,
his.
it's KB.
It's KB.
It's good.
Ooh,
I
it's KB.
whenever he was talking about it earlier, I was like, yeah, that's a good one.
Yep,
That was
yep,
supposed to
I
be-
knew exactly what it was
He
from. I was like,
cheated. He
That's not
cheated.
cheating, bro. Y'all use the Bible
Cheated.
verses. What are you talking
I mean,
about?
that is the word of God. It is.
No.
You know,
But
God breathed.
Nah, I like
what was the question? I'm sorry.
I didn't even have a question. I just,
Oh, I
He
thought
just
you-
wanted to hear
Sales pitch.
more.
It was just a sales pitch.
Okay.
that was just great.
Well, yeah.
I thought.
Well, I tell you what, with like the funness of it, I did have one question. It's a philosophical question.
Oh boy.
And this is before we go into like the brand stuff of Jesus Christ and like the
Yeah.
current state. It's just a fun question. How could Satan have sinned if he was in heaven? So does that mean we can sin in heaven? So if I get to heaven, can I still sin there? Satan did it. What the hell?
I know. And it's definitely interesting.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
That's a good question. I've never thought about that, actually.
I've never thought about it, but was it more of him sinning or more of him wanting to be looked at as God?
Yeah.
Because he wanted people to worship him. And so it was more of like him spreading discourse
Yeah.
and division between him,
Right.
the angels of God, and him.
Well, and I also, I
I
mean,
feel like
if you
that's a
look at
pretty
it,
big sin, though.
I mean,
Yeah,
I
if
mean,
you look at
you're playing
the
devil's
story
advocate
too,
here,
I
yeah.
mean, obviously God is not evil, so he's not communing with evil. But yet, when you read the story of Job, constantly the devil was approaching God and then being like, I've scoured the land and tried to find, it was that kind of deal. And so those are questions that obviously I'm not going to even try to tell you that I have the answer. Those are questions that I will stand before God one day and be like, yo, tell me about this.
I mean, this could literally be an entire episode.
Yeah,
Yes,
you could talk
because
about that. That's a
it
deep
is
question.
interesting. I've thought about that too. I mean, I'm not sitting
I've
there
never
saying,
thought
but
about
I have. I mean, how did that happen? But it was, I guess, before the creation of the world, though, right? Because or was it right after? I guess because
Well, it was after that he threw Lucifer
down.
Yeah, from heaven. So
So it would be like in the creation. I don't know. I'd have to look at
I would have
that.
to say it would be probably during creation or after.
Yeah,
he did
because
throw
it
Satan
it would have
down
to be either
earth.
during or after.
Yeah. So that is an interesting question.
I mean, obviously we can't answer like completely, but I would say it's a thought process. Obviously, I do believe that him, like Curly was saying, he was sowing discord to, hey, look at me.
Right.
So obviously there's an insecurity thought there. So how can there be an insecure thought in heaven?
Right.
Or it's like, because they're not really humans, they're souls rather, or angels, if you will. So it's like, how does that really play out, or how does that look? We don't really know.
Yeah.
Other than they were angels, but at the same time, God intended for Lucifer to be who he was, right? And to,
Or he knew it would happen.
or he knew it would happen,
Right,
if
he's
you will.
all-knowing.
It's not that he created him so that he would for sure do that. He just created him, and it happened because he knew that it was going to happen. He had a choice to choose whether or not, but it's like, okay, if you're playing devil's advocate, you have a choice in heaven to choose whether or not you want to worship God or
Well, I
not.
don't
It's
think
like,
and I don't think you
it's
would
a
be able to
crazy
sin
question.
in heaven now.
That's a
I
crazy
don't-
question.
and
Yeah.
I don't think you could sin in heaven ever. But
I kind of think you can. Just in thinking of it in terms of and I'm not saying that I am right, but I am not saying that I am right. This is just talking through this.
Thought, yeah.
I think it boils down to kind of like the whole free will thing.
Yeah.
But it's like if you are in heaven, something you can't fathom, something we could talk about and like you could talk about and paint a pretty picture with words, but you really can't fathom it.
Yeah.
So it's like, why would you want to? That's the question.
Yeah.
But I think in terms of free will, it's the same way to get to heaven or to send yourself to hell. It's you have the free choice to be able to do it, because it's like asking the same question of why did God make man when he knew that we would sin?
Yeah. But it was
Why
a
would
free
he do
choice.
that?
Yeah, he wanted us to choose.
Yeah, he already
Forces
sent
them and
Satan
love
down,
them.
Yeah.
right? There's already been that
Yeah.
division.
Why would he send us down to the place where Satan dwells too? You know.
Yeah, and he knew,
Yeah, I
and
mean,
he
it is
loved us. He wanted us to be like him,
Yeah.
and he knew we were going to sin because he knows the end from the beginning. And then he knew Jesus, like he knew everything, how it would all pan out. He knew that this podcast would happen at this very moment for the person who's watching this across the screen
From
to be able to think from this super philosophical, weird point of view.
Right.
Yeah.
Why would he do that? So it's kind of like when you ask those questions, for me personally, I think you can still sin in heaven, but you would have to be the stupidest person to have ever been born into existence to just downright be like, you know what? I think I'd rather go to hell.
Yeah. Well, it's for me because the Bible talks about,
or maybe there is no, like, I don't know.
There's no
I
sorrow.
don't think you can sin in heaven.
I would just agree to disagree. I disagree. I don't think you can sin
I don't either.
in heaven.
But I do think that, again, the times, it's such a cop-out. Times were different, obviously. I mean, Jesus and Satan, again, when you read it, why was Satan even allowed in to come and ask Jesus, or not Jesus, correct. Why would he ask God, okay, to, hey, I've scoured the land and and he goes, oh, have you considered Job, And it's like, why would God send, to torment, you know what I'm saying? Because that's another question that you could look at, because it's like he allowed that to happen. Yeah. But it was to prove that Job's commitment to God,
I will say, out of all the books in the Bible, though, Job is actually one of my favorites.
Yeah. It's the oldest book.
It's
incredible.
It's a weird, beautiful, it's dark, but it's beautiful. And when you really like, it's actually that book, just personally, and for whoever's listening, when I was at my, like, I had to go see a doctor because my heart rate would not go lower than the 90s. It was like constantly floating above 100, and I was just doing too much, too stressed out. It was the podcast and like 6 other things I was trying to do all at the same time. Couldn't figure it out. And I remember just riding my bike, and I was listening to the book of Job on an audiobook. I was like, Bible's probably what I need. I probably don't need to listen to like some kind of like
motivational
fun
thing, or
just like something fun or just music. That's what I'm gonna do. And I picked that one. And I was actually listening to the Streetlights version, which, by the way, if you guys have not heard of Streetlights, download the Bible app. It's Streetlights, and it's basically like a rap instrumental, and then they basically like rap the verses to you, but it's in like a it is it's really cool. It's a really like, I don't even know how to explain it. Yeah, it's really cool. But it gave me so much peace in a weird way of listening to Job.
Job is like you were saying, it's a love letter, but it's also like a picture of spiritual warfare, because he's it's showing you that the devil's talking and then God's talking. So it's like this, we can't see in the spiritual realm, obviously. So I think that there's always a clash, and I think there's always a bite for bite, So I think it just showed you, what God was saying, what the devil was saying, what God was allowing, or however you want to put it. But I think it's really neat.
Well, and I going back to just the original question, though. Yeah. I kind of go back to, again, those are the questions where it's like you got to talk with God on it, because at the end of the day, there's the question of who created God, or how was God even come into existence? Because in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and God was the Word. So he was there. Well, how did he even come into existence? And,
well, people like to settle on answers.
Yeah,
people love to settle on answers.
Oh yeah, big time.
I do and I don't.
Sometimes depends.
Yeah, I'm open to like, yes, you can sin in heaven. No, you can't sin in heaven. Yeah. I'm open to both of those, like parties. Yeah. But some people who are listening to this may be so for one side or the other, that they go on this binge on YouTube or wherever it is, and they ask the question of just like, can you sin in heaven? If Satan didn't, why couldn't somebody else now be able to sin in heaven? Like, what's the difference?
Yeah.
And I think it's a good question to ask. Those questions like that.
It's interesting. Yeah. It's
because
definitely
like
an interesting deal.
the kids you preach to, every now and then you'll get a wild question.
Oh, we get some wild questions.
And you'll be like, you know what? His ways are higher than ours. I don't know.
And that's why I said, I'm not going to even try to tell you I know I believe wholeheartedly you can't sin in heaven.
Yeah.
I just do.
Yeah.
I think going back to the Job thing, where you had God and Satan, and Satan would go to heaven and talk to God, right?
Yeah.
But I think plays a part of Satan didn't dwell in heaven with the other angels and with God. God allowed Satan to come and talk to him.
Yeah.
And I think it's all through God allowing it to happen.
Well, he was up there with it says he was up there with like Michael the archangel and stuff like that. I mean, he was the musician.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But
right.
Did he dwell with him though? Did he stay there like
No, I think again, like you said, he was allowed in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, hey.
I don't know. What is in though? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, it's always up
I
for
would have
discussion.
to look at the scriptures again, and
It's just one of those things where I was like, "Hey, I'll get back to you on that."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
for now, we'll leave that question to the comments section.
Yeah.
If my Wild West of like 0 comments actually comments, wherever you're watching this, whether it's like Spotify or YouTube.
Yeah.
I don't think you can comment on Apple Podcasts, but I know you
know.
can on YouTube and
You can
Spotify,
write your
can.
review.
Instagram,
Sure.
Facebook, wherever you're watching this. What do you think? Can
Yeah.
you sin in heaven?
Yeah. Interesting.
I'd like to know.
Yeah,
I'd
me
like to
too.
know what people
I'd
have
like
to say.
to know what people have to say too.
Yeah, I'd like to know
because I've never heard that question before, like ever.
Very
That's
deep
an
one.
interesting. It's very
You
deep.
go down the
Bro,
rabbit hole
you
on
drank
that one.
you drank the 7 Brew coffee.
Yeah, maybe
I
you
thought I
did.
was the one thinking deep.
No, he never went and got his coffee. Remember?
No, I never did. This is just me.
Don't drink it then. You're some crazy questions.
Never mind. I'll leave that alone.
Next one.
But with that being said, I kind of wanted to finish off with this just because it can go so many places, and we started alluding to it when you started talking about I think it was Logan Paul's podcast and George Janko, stuff like that. But it was like the current state of Christianity, because obviously there's always been like podcasts and stuff like that online, but more so nowadays there are these like specific like Christian YouTubers or podcasters that are like
known.
they're more known for like almost like prosperity preachers.
Oh yeah.
But Christianity has completely taken on like a new name in terms of like how people see it nowadays. And I just wanted to know, and I can go more into it, but how do you think people view Christianity nowadays?
Well,
Saved, unsaved, doesn't matter, just as a whole.
Yeah. That's great.
I mean, for when he was talking about Logan Paul and George Janko and all them, I mean, obviously George Janko has kind of come into a very popular arena now. A lot of people look to George Janko's podcast not to get all the answers, but really to hear. And the way that I think of it now, especially with Gen Z and even the next generations coming up, everybody of course craves real. They crave genuine. They crave authenticity. But they also, it's almost like, and I want to be careful that we, again, you ask that question, and it's like, I'm not an expert. I don't have all the answers, I'm not perfect. And I think the church world in the past has come from that expertise, like know-it-all mentality, to where people
they
think
had to have
like,
that final answer.
Yeah,
like,
and they
yes, you
think,
can sin in heaven. No, you can't.
and how stupid of you to think anything different, and it's like, and they question your doubt, or they question, and it's like, I think people crave to just be real, and so I think what makes George Janko's podcast so popular is that he's a normal guy that came from very successful podcasts and was well known and was doing well, and he was like, this isn't jiving with me anymore. I don't like the way this is. They're making fun of God, and to the point that he got up and was like, I'm out. I'm going to start my own thing, and I don't have all the answers, but I'm curious and I just want to know. I mean, they had their big Avengers podcast thing that they put out where it was a bunch of them, and you can have all your ideas on that. It's funny. I don't want to put people on a platform and make them like, these are the Avengers. Yeah, I thought that was a little weird, but
yeah, but I mean, that is like I know you're talking about, they call it the Christian Avengers.
Yeah,
it's like
I mean, it's cool. I mean, they have a bunch of stuff, but he said a few things that were controversial, and it got him in a little bit of trouble. And so he was getting hit in the comment section, and he just came out and was like, "Hey, that was not my intention. I don't know the answers. I'm literally fishing and trying to find out." And I think that that's where the brand of Christianity is that there's people that are turned off by it because they've only seen one side. That's the, repent or you're going to hell, and the expertise, or they have the people that are genuinely trying and saying, "Hey, listen, I'm not perfect. I know you're not perfect, but hey, let's learn together, and let's just explore this." I think that that's cool.
For sure. I think people are also, there's a lot of people that have been church hurt. They've been hurt by people in the church, and so that's kind of their basis of what God is, and they don't really understand the love of God, and they just base off of, well, if I went to this church and the church hurt me, then that's what Christianity is, and I don't want to be around a bunch of hypocrites. And that's what I feel like a lot of people get their basis of Christianity. Then they go online and they try to watch people that have influence and have opinions on God because they still do believe, but they just don't know how to get connected, or because they've been hurt and they're kind of scared and fearful to get connected with the people. So I think a lot of people are in that boat. Because every time I hear from someone that says they don't go to church, it's immediate. That's their reason why, is that they went to a church and they got hurt relationally. Something that the preacher said offended them, or someone else offended them in a small group, or they felt like they opened up and their crap got out to everybody else, or whatever it is. There's a bunch of different reasons, but I feel like a lot of it is in that state. And then there's people like Stephen said that are just completely turned off to it because they feel like Christians, they hear all these people repent or go to hell. It's street preachers, people that are constantly telling them that they're going to go to hell because of the way that they're living,
or whatever.
or they're dressed or things like that. And so a lot of people
I think
are
a
turned
few
off
of them
to it.
just got upset you said the word crap.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah,
for
exactly.
sure.
My editor bleeped it out, so it's fine.
Yeah.
Well, we're good. Yeah, I
don't understand why he didn't bleep it out for me. But whatever. It's
Yeah, come on, bro. Really? No. But yeah, that's where I feel like
I'm joking, but I'm not as well. Like people,
I know. No.
No,
You're
right
because it's true.
You're right.
Yeah.
You're right.
They make a big deal.
I feel like that's where a lot of Christianity is, but a lot of people right now are just searching because I think the Christian Avengers things was good because a lot of people were just looking for answers. And those guys have a lot of influence. Mm-hmm. And so they're all brought in one room and everybody's like, "Oh, I wonder what they're all going to say." And so it was just kind of cool to see what everybody said, because I feel like a lot of them had different opinions on a lot of different things. Mm-hmm. And then some of them agreed with this person. The other one was like, "I don't know. I don't really know."
I mean, just a second ago, we both were kind of on two ends. I lean more towards I think you probably can sit in heaven. You would just be the stupidest person alive to ever been born into existence to do something of that.
Yeah.
But I'm not saying that's the answer.
Yeah.
No,
I
absolutely.
explicitly looked at that camera and said, "This is not."
Yeah.
I'm not saying this for certain.
Yeah, that's one thing that I want to go home and read some commentary on that and see what other Christians.
Yeah, because I feel like Christianity is a consumer culture that so much of social media is consuming. So they watch a bunch of things about what people have to say, but not actually open the Bible and see what God has to say.
Right.
And no one really is reading the Bible anymore. They're just listening to what other people have to say about the Bible, and they go, "Oh, I like that," or that's their opinion of what it is now, and that's not what Christians are supposed to do. We're supposed to read the Bible because that's God's word. Right. We're supposed to follow God's word.
Yeah, I'd almost say that's even worse that's even worse than reading the Bible and making it fit your narrative.
Right. Yes, right. Absolutely.
It's actually worse.
Yes, way worse.
Yeah, if you're like, well, the Table Podcast says this or that, it's like, no, don't
not
follow
what I say.
me.
Yeah. Follow what I say.
Follow Christ,
Yes,
so
for sure.
That's most important.
Yeah, so there's a book that I read, and I'll recommend it just because it was a good book.
Yeah.
There's so many books that I can recommend, but like specifically,
I was a big reader.
Are you?
No.
Well,
you got like fuzz on your.
I've been playing
beard.
with this
Curly.
fuzz right here.
Oh, man.
But fidget, so
I've
been tearing up.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That's all. It's all good. It's all good. This book though, it's called Rebranding Christianity.
Yeah.
And it basically talks about the current state of Christianity. So like pastors used to be viewed very different from how they're viewed now.
Yeah.
Like your pastor was you go to see the pastor for whatever problems you're having. They were like counselors, which they
Yeah.
still are.
Yeah.
But they were just viewed in this very different position, just culturally, versus where it's at nowadays. And in the book, there is it's written actually by a pastor, a non-believer, and somebody who refers to themselves as a nun, not like N-U-N and N-O-N-E.
Oh.
A nun, as in like they've been in church, they did believe, but they just choose not to go either way
Yeah.
Okay.
because they have questions or they're just
So
unsure.
like agnostic, like they just don't believe.
Kind of like somebody on YouTube who you're like, oh, they talk about Jesus because they're curious about it, but they're not sold.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
he's not aligned to agnostic. He's not aligned to any
Anything.
kind of
He's
religion. He's just
None.
yeah,
Yeah.
just none. But
Interesting.
that's who the book was written by, and he refers to Christianity as a brand.
Yeah.
And that's why I was saying it before, and I really like that because everything is a brand. When you walk around, when you look at anything, there's a brand associated to it.
Yeah.
Like Nike, when you see the brand, what do you associate with Nike?
Sports.
Sports, just do it.
Just do it,
Like getting after it. Like that's the brand of Nike.
Yeah.
And people love brands so much that they'll die
Dive
for the
into
brand.
it.
I mean,
Yeah.
think about any like sports.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
sure.
Like they're all in on it.
Yeah.
Well, the brand of Jesus, what is the brand of Jesus?
Yeah.
The brand of Jesus is love. It's loving other people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But who represents that brand, right? When you have a brand of Nike or you have a brand of like Southwest Airlines,
Mm-hmm.
who is the brand of Southwest Airlines?
Right.
It's the pilot and it's mainly the flight attendants, the people that interact with the public.
Yeah.
But who is representing the brand of Christianity?
Yeah.
It's the people in the
Yeah, it's
church.
the bride.
Exactly.
It's the bride.
Well, it's funny that you say that because it's 1 Corinthians where it's they're saying we are called to be Christ ambassadors for we appeal for Christ.
Mhm.
And so you're saying a brand and how us as Christians, we have to appeal for Christ and we are the brand. And so I find it funny that we're on that subject and there's a verse that literally goes with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but I mean, like that's the whole point of it is
Yeah.
that the brands can lose their way as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
Like there's a story in the book of Coca-Cola where they decided to try to. This is after they stopped putting crack in it and they got
Yeah.
to the original Coke. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
They tried to change the recipe,
Oh, I know that's right.
and
Yeah.
the people loved Coke so much that they were so upset.
Yeah,
And like,
they were-
I mean, like Coca-Cola was tanking, and they were forced to go back to their old recipe because that was their brand,
Mhm.
like the
Yeah.
brand of Coke. And that's
Yeah.
what everybody knew it as. But the brand of Christianity, I think a lot of Christians nowadays don't represent the brand.
Right.
Yeah.
I almost don't. I don't even really necessarily want to associate with. It's a shame, but it's the word Christianity is to be Christ-like, right?
Yeah.
To represent Christ.
Yeah.
But most people do
Aren't
not.
Christ-like.
Yeah.
They're like, yeah, that guy looks ugly. I don't really like him
Yeah.
because he's got a really ugly looking face. Or like, they're broke or they're beneath me or they don't
Yeah.
Yeah.
necessarily love people. They like people or they look at them for what they can do for them.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like what you said, a lot of the church hurt people.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But that's kind of how now I'm not saying I fully agree with everything in the book.
No. Yeah.
But that's kind of how I view Christianity nowadays
Yeah.
is that Christians have given it such a bad, not saying mega churches or anything like that, but maybe it's part of it. But Christians nowadays have not represented the brand of Jesus
Yeah.
very well.
Not at
So
all.
this is my thing to jump on that. When it comes to branding, I'm a big nerd, so I think immediately of like the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Okay, so they put out the show Loki, right, and they had Kang in it, and Jonathan Majors is the main villain guy, and he did an exceptional job. Dude was freaking awesome, and then he got those allegations, and it hurt the brand. It hurt Marvel to where they had to dude, we were going like super far with Kang. Like he was gonna be the big ultimate villain, and then it was just like pull him out. Like he's gone, and let's bring in Robert Downey Jr. and make him, Dr.
Doom.
Doom or whatever.
Yeah.
So, but long story short, Yeah, it affected the brand, but Marvel was still Marvel, and there's still people that are going to be associated with Marvel. They're going to watch it. There's diehards. Some of the new shows are just lame to me. I'm not as involved as I used to be.
Yeah.
Just, there's some Daredevil I know has been popping off and doing well. But the reason I say that is that it's the same way with Christianity. There's going to be people that represent Christ it's going to be not good. They're not going to represent Christ. But the end of the day, you have to go with the integrity of who Christ is and who God is. You check his integrity.
Yeah.
Because the ultimate brand is God himself and Jesus.
Yeah, like
and
you said.
And the Holy Spirit. And so I have to go back to what the scriptures say. When I put Christianity through the lens of a pastor or an influencer, a Bryce Crawford or a George Janko, I have to remind myself that George Janko is a human being.
Yep.
And George Janko makes mistakes just like myself. I would never in a million years ask the viewers to, again, look at me and it's me. Follow me because I'm the best, and I have all the answers. Again, you ask one question, and I'm going, I might have to get back on that because I don't have everything.
Yeah.
But I do know who has all the answers, and that's Christ. That's God Himself, and that's the integrity. That's the brand. So no matter what, I encourage the viewers to look at what the Word says, and God has all the answers. He is all knowing.
It's kind of like what you said with Coke. They went to a different brand. They went to a different brand. They went to a different recipe, and their brand was this original recipe, but they had to go back to it.
I know the real taste.
It's So I think it's for most listeners, believers, people that have been hurt by the church or they have been hurt by someone in the church. I think it's like Stephen said, you have to go back to the scripture because that's the original recipe. It's the brand itself is like you said at the beginning. God is love, and if you go back to His scriptures, you're reading what the brand is.
Yeah.
Does that mean that every time the people that are representing Him are always going to represent Him completely? No, because we're all imperfect. We all make mistakes. Yeah. And there's even Christians, we claim to have the righteousness of Christ, not to be perfect ourselves.
Yeah.
So
I think a lot of times, a lot of Christians today have a secondhand revelation of who Christ is.
Yeah.
And it's like, for me, this thing with Jesus is a relationship. It's not a religion. When people say, "Hey, are you religious?" No, I'm in a relationship with Jesus. Like, and so I'm.
It's a weird secondhand relationship.
Yeah, it's a secondhand relationship, and so a lot of times, like students, like we'll disciple or we'll mentor, they'll want to get a girlfriend, and it's like, okay, that's awesome, bro. You want to do that? Pray on it. You feel like God's telling you, and then a few months go by, and the girlfriend's kind of coming to church, and it was really what Micah and Stephen's parents, they challenged Kristen, who's my wife now, but at the time when they had challenged her, she was my girlfriend. We just started dating. She had went on a mission trip that I didn't go on. And I was working on a tugboat at the time, and so I couldn't go. And they had pulled her into the room, and they had talked to her, and they had said, "Hey, if you and Curly were to break up today, would you still serve Jesus?" And she had to think about it, and it was kind of like oh my gosh, would I? Because her relationship with Christ was based off of mine. I'm sold out for Jesus. I'm going to youth every Wednesday. So I'm
just going to do whatever Curly
going to church every Sunday. Yeah. And it was, okay, well, now I have to separate my relationship with Curly and with Jesus. And I feel like a lot of times today, there's people who have a secondhand revelation or a secondhand relationship of Jesus. And let's say, for example, like, man, Stephen, I love you, bro. You preach to me at Face It. I'm going to follow you wherever you go. Yeah. Stephen messes up, but I don't have my own relationship with Jesus. Yeah. And he messes up and falls away. Then I'm going to go, oh, well, Stephen doesn't follow him nor, so I'm not going to go to church. Right, yeah. And there's hurt in that because I'm going off of what Stephen is saying. Yeah. And I'm going off of his actions. And so just to kind of close what I was just saying, but you see a lot of people who have the second hand of a revelation of who Christ is instead of seeking after it for themselves.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah, I think that's a really good way to put it. Just because even how we were talking about like other popular people within social media, it is more of a secondhand relationship towards a thing. Kind of, I said it earlier on in the podcast. They have more of a relationship with you than you ever will with them.
Right.
Just solely due to numbers. It's impossible. So it is a weird second-hand relationship, and you wouldn't want a second-hand relationship from anybody.
No,
No.
Yeah,
no.
exactly.
You want them to
I
be
think
all in,
it's
just like you were saying.
it's
Yeah,
funny.
you get sick from secondhand smoke just like you do
Yeah,
from
exactly.
smoking it
secondhand
directly.
relationship
And if
with
you're gonna
just a
do
good
something
analogy.
bad, you might as well do it really bad. You
Yeah,
might as well
I
go all
mean,
the way. Just
yeah,
you
Yeah.
know.
All the way,
If
do it.
You're already.
following with
Yeah,
the
don't
crowd,
listen to
too.
that. Yeah,
We had asked
sorry, I turned a good thing bad.
No, you're good.
we had asked a question to the students when we were preaching. I think it was a few months ago, but it was like, hey, who are some like major Christians? We were kind of just asking the students, and instead of mentioning pastors or different like evangelists, like a Billy Graham was who we were looking for, or just like a Stephen Furtick, like a big time pastor, or Jensen Franklin. It's Bryce Crawford.
Right.
Cliff, I don't know how to pronounce
His last name.
Kneckley.
Yeah.
Who goes to the college campuses and he answers all like the question you have. If Cliff was here,
Oh man,
he would
I
have an
would've
answer for
loved
you.
to hear what
I'm
Cliff
sure
would-
I would
And
love to see what
He
he
would
says
have
too.
an answer for you because like it's like the apologetic types, and but like those are who the big Christians are. And so if Bryce Crawford today were to fall and mess up, or some scandal were to come out about him, there would be so many hurt Christians because
They put him on
they're
a pedestal.
put him on a pedestal.
You know what's fun though, like about this conversation, is that the people watching it, were basically the same people as us watching their stuff as well.
Yeah.
The only difference between us and them, kind of like I was saying before, was we're doing it. We're actually
Right.
being able to give yourself a voice
Yeah.
and to open up those questions, or
Yeah.
to like discuss it in kind of the way we're discussing it,
Yeah.
and to have an open mind of saying, yeah, like, hey guys, this is you are having a secondhand relationship with Christ at this very moment.
Yeah.
Turn away and stop
Yeah.
watching this
Yeah.
podcast.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
For real.
But yeah, I don't know. I really like the way you put that.
Mhm.
I've never really thought about it like that as a secondhand relationship, but it's very true.
Yeah.
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 And I think so many people. Sorry, I know you.
Yeah, no, you're good.
But I think so many people chase it. We were talking about it like I think it was like 2 podcasts ago, where people chase a feeling. Well, you'll go to church one Sunday, or you go to youth one Sunday, and you hear the pastor preaching, and you get like a
Goosebumps
shiver, or
and-
you get some goosebumps on. You're like, oh, he said something real good. And,
It
it's
applies to where I'm at right now. in my
exactly,
life,
and
you know?
it's you
Did
get
I
an
have
emotional
7 Brew?
feeling.
No, I didn't.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so it's like you go to church and you feel like the goosebumps, and you're like, man, like I feel like God's moving because I get that tingly feeling, and
Yeah.
you base it off of an emotional time instead of
Emotional response.
emotional response instead of a revelational response.
Yeah.
Where like
Now, they both can coincide.
Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, we're not saying.
absolutely. And
Now,
so-
I know that we were joking about coffee, but I will say those can coincide, and coffee can help.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Because coffee is a drug. It's a
Yeah.
stimulant. It's
Yes.
caffeine, and
Oh,
it
yeah.
does
Big
get
time.
you excited. It does
Yeah.
get your
It does.
For
get
sure.
your
mind
adrenaline
rolling,
going.
absolutely.
For sure.
Yeah, helps you lock in.
Oh yeah.
Dude, I hope you lock in for sure.
Oh yeah.
It's also dangerous. I've drinking too much coffee before, and it's not a good thing.
No.
No.
Yeah, caffeine overdose is a very real thing.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's
yeah.
a very real thing.
Yeah.
I have a story maybe for another time, but
Yeah.
so one of the things I wrote down with this book, I read it like a year ago because I planned on having a episode with a local pastor.
Yeah.
Just because I also think it's fun to have a pastor on
Yeah.
the PP podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just kind of a. It's
Yeah, I
like
think
I
it'd
said, yeah. Like I'd love to talk to him in the same way that I'd love to talk to anybody else.
Yeah.
And somebody viewing the PP and they see a pastor, it's like,
Yeah.
all right, a little
Yeah.
weird. Might look at that.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, see what it's
Yeah.
about.
What that's about.
Might be
yeah.
completely normal, but
Yeah.
I didn't get to film that episode, but I did write this down, and it was basically about the branding problem they were
Yeah.
talking about in the book, and one of them was that it was a quote from this 21-year-old girl who said that Christians are full of poop, and that there is a large exodus in the church of millennials and Gen Z, mainly because the evangelical Christianity is different. I think I'm saying that really poorly, but there's a bunch of stuff in here that I'm
Yeah.
just gonna read off, and it's basically how they see Christianity
Yeah.
versus they see the world.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's that millennials see themselves as open-minded.
Mm-hmm.
They see evangelical Christians as closed-minded.
Yeah.
And I kind of agree with a lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
They see themselves as accepting of LGBTQ plus
yeah.
RZ
Yeah.
evangelical Christians as, reflecting all of that.
Right.
Millennials see themselves as intellectual and pro-science versus Christians are non-intellectual and anti-science, which is it's always a debate I hate.
Yeah.
But because whatever, we'll get into
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Millennials are inclusive and kind, and Christians are exclusive and mean. They see themselves as diverse, Christians as segregated.
Yeah.
They're fighters of racial justice, Christians as perpetuators of racial injustice. They see themselves as fighters for social justice, Christians as protectors of the status quo. Protectors of the environment, Christians as climate change deniers. They see themselves as spiritual, Christians as religious and institutional.
Yeah.
So basically, the values are at odds, or they're perceived to be at odds with evangelical Christianity.
Yeah.
So there's obviously like a lot of stuff to talk about just within that.
Yeah.
But the thing is that some of those are true. In the same sense of like the Christians representing Christianity in a really poor light.
Right.
There's some stuff that like like the Bible takes a hard stance against,
Yeah.
and like
yeah.
it says what it says.
Yeah.
Right.
But there's some stuff as where like right here where it said millennials are inclusive and kind, and
Yeah.
Christians are exclusive and mean.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of that.
Yeah.
Christians can be very exclusive.
Yeah.
And Christians can also be very segregated. Like, oh, we're over here. I'm just
Yeah.
gonna say crazy Mormons, but whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry if you're a Mormon.
It can be. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just
can be,
joking, but yeah, like you're Mormons, you're Baptists, you're I say Mormons, but that's like a completely different. That's not even Christianity. I don't know why I'm going there.
But, no,
But like
yeah,
catechism
yeah,
or
get it, yeah.
Baptist or
Yeah.
Judaism or whatever it is,
Yeah.
it's very segregated. And then also the thing of didn't mean to make that joke so much about Mormonism, but millennials see themselves as open-minded, and evangelical Christians as
Closed-minded,
closed-minded, which can be very true in a lot of times.
Yes,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
can be.
In the same way of like I am so excited because I don't get to talk about this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I'm having an episode that's very Christian heavy,
Yeah.
whereas like the next episode may be with the mayor, or it might
Yeah.
be about marijuana.
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
open-minded enough to talk about both of those
Right.
Yeah.
and whether they're right or wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the same of I'll ask you this about Christians being divided on alcohol.
Yeah. Okay.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like just that one question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can
Yeah.
Christians drink alcohol?
Well, I'll say this.
Just in that alone.
yeah.
Alone.
This
Yeah.
is this is one of the biggest controversial things, but for me, the way that I see it, okay, us as ministers, we believe that we should set a standard to not drink alcohol because alcohol leads to more alcohol.
Yeah, you guys
Yeah.
absolutely can.
And
That's
yeah,
my,
so
that's my opinion.
So
I
for
mean,
us,
it's-
for
yeah.
us, we just don't want to, because there are some ministers that will come on your podcast and say, "Hey, well, I don't see a problem with it,"
Right.
and it's because they do drink alcohol. You know, for us, we see it as we're going to set the example and a witness of Christ, and we don't believe that it's something that promotes Christianity or Jesus.
Right.
You know, now I will say that if there is a Christian that they're at a crawfish boil, right? They're with their family. They drink one beer.
And crack a cold one of them.
They crack a cold one with their dad or their grandpa or whatever. Okay, that's understandable. But what I always tell Christians is that if you drink one, you're going to drink probably another one.
Yeah.
Most likely. Not saying that you always will, but
Not saying you're gonna get wasted
more
drunk.
always, when you drink one, you're going to want to drink one more. That's just how it is.
Yeah.
That's with anything. You're going to, if it's something that you like, you're going to want more of it.
Right.
And so the way that I see it is drunkenness is a sin. The Bible says that drunkenness itself is a sin. So if
Yeah.
you get drunk, it is sinful.
Yeah.
Do I think that if you drink one beer and you don't get drunk, are you sinning?
Yeah.
Not necessarily. And that's the way that I see it. I'm not this like fine line. You can't drink a beer. Or if you drink a beer, you're going to hell.
Yeah.
No. Okay. That's
think-
not me.
I think this is fun. I think we'll probably like close the episode out with this just
Yeah.
because this is a fun one
Yeah.
to talk
Yeah.
about.
yeah. For sure. But
yeah,
that's just kind of where I stand on
Yeah.
it with it.
even
Same,
but
for sure.
even from like a just a common sense thing of alcohol, those who drink alcohol without as soon as alcohol is in the room or just in the vicinity and you've had any of it to drink whatsoever, it complicates everything.
Yeah.
I would personally be scared to drink with virtually anyone if I don't know them. Like as soon as alcohol is involved, you don't know if this person is going to drink a lot. You don't know if this person has just drank a little bit, but they have issues that no one knows about, and now they want to fight you, and now you have to deal with that. Or like somebody,
something crazy.
the
Always leads
police
to
got
bad.
involved or something along those lines. But if you have remotely any kind of alcohol in your system, you were intoxicated. I don't care if you actually weren't, but like legally in court, technically, yes, there was alcohol involved,
system,
and it was in this person, not this person.
Yeah.
So it does, like, just from a common sense point of view,
Yeah.
it complicates things.
Absolutely. I agree with you.
When
So
I say, I mean,
yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say just that, one of the fruits of the Spirit is self-control, and so when I think of that, like you said, the moment you begin to drink, you become intoxicated, and so if it takes away your self-control, then we have an issue, because that is not of God if it's taking away your self-control. Same thing with smoking weed and doing these things. It's like, oh, it's not going to kill you. It's not, but if it's taking away your headspace to where you can't even think, it's like you said, man, you put alcohol, it's not like, okay, that beer is going to kill me, but you don't know, if you don't know the guy, like you just said, you don't know if he's going to drink 8 of them. You don't know if he's going to try to pick a fight with me, or if he's going to say something about my wife.
Even if I know them and been friends with them a long time.
You don't know where it's going to go.
Yeah.
I think it just allows temptation and for Satan to come in. Like, I used to, when just in high school, like before I was like truly following Christ, like I was kind of in and I was kind of out.
Yeah.
I was going to parties and I was drinking, or I would even, like in 8th grade, like I was drinking. And I was like smoking weed, and so I experienced all that stuff and doing all those different things. But I'm not gonna, if I know I used to do that, and I'm now proclaiming that I'm a Christian, I'm not gonna put myself in a place where people go, oh, Curly's drinking, and I'm having to watch my witness, because I don't want to be like what we were talking about earlier, people who are hypocrites, and it's like you said, a brand. We have to watch the brand of Christ. And
it also says your life is a living testimony.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I have to preach what I'm saying. If I go to a school on Monday and I talk about profanity, and then right after the students leave, I'm looking at the teachers and I'm just chopping it up with them and having a
Sometimes
conversation.
it's not about what you say, it's about what you indirectly say.
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
And I say a profane word. I'm literally just going against what I just said, and the teacher's going to go, oh my gosh, this guy's a hypocrite.
Yeah.
And I'm not appealing for Christ in the right way. Am I going to fail? Absolutely.
Yeah, but what about the approach of it from people who are not leaders, like for you guys that are actively preaching and teaching other people, just for people who don't claim to have that title, if you will.
Yeah, I think
you're talking about for alcohol.
Alcohol. Yeah, I think it's more on the it's. Do you want to be a license for someone else to indulge into sin? Because if you're gonna drink it, it's gonna, like you said, it's gonna lead to bad. You don't know what's gonna happen.
What if it's like a business event and it's like not even a wedding, because weddings can get crazy. I filmed a wedding. Really quick story. I think I said it in another episode. I've had a wedding where multiple where literally the groom actually couldn't make it out because he was stumbling and throwing up.
Oh my gosh.
I've also had weddings where, this is the one I wanted to say, where a guy got so drunk he went back to his truck and got a super soaker full of Bud Light, and he was just like spraying the ceilings, and then he went and twerked on grandma.
Oh, nice.
That's how that wedding went. It was wild.
And you're over there just with the camera.
You're just filming it all.
Yeah, I was like, I can't use this.
Yeah.
Actually, I was kind of like getting out of Dodge, so my camera didn't get soaked full of Bud Light.
Oh,
but,
I'm sure. Yeah, I bet you were freaking out right there.
Jeez.
Please don't hit my
yeah, but sorry, I didn't mean to get sidetracked, but it just immediately made me think of that.
Yeah.
But like in a business setting, so like somebody who's flying out to go sell clients to be a part of their business, and they're having like a casual drink with each other, like they're having, just like one small drink with their dinner or something like that.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that?
It's interesting.
I mean,
Not for you as a leader. I'm talking about just like
as just, I think it would be the same. Not saying for me as a leader, but from my past. Hey, I used to drink. I'm going to church. And the church promotes alcohol not to be this thing, like how we're not supposed to do that because we're not supposed to have a drunken mind. And I think as Christians, and it was kind of what I was hitting on earlier, when you have a real revelation of who Jesus is, you're gonna try to do your best to not step into a place where you could sin.
Well, and the Word of God says not to have anything that has the appearance of evil either.
Exactly.
So it's also that too.
And so it's stepping in a place where, hey, I'm not gonna, like, if they want to drink, absolutely, we could be at the table, but I'm gonna get like a Barks root beer or I'm gonna get a Coke because I don't want to let that temptation define who I am. I don't need to, again, not coming from a leader stance, but I don't need to be someone, I don't need to have a good time to drink. I could have a real fun time with some friends without drinking. You know,
like I said before, the common sense thing. I mean, it complicates things, and the easiest thing is just to completely avoid it. But I'm trying to approach it of like the way of, obviously it's the easiest thing just to completely avoid it. You know, common sense, like I don't even have to question it. But like the people who do, I'm not even gonna say have a temptation, like, but in that business sense of just like I don't even know how to say that.
Well, because like for me, like okay, if I'm sitting down
Like
with a
you're with
businessman and I'm
your
not a
wife,
pastor,
let's say that.
like in the confines of your house kind of deal.
Yeah, or like you went on a cruise and you had something or
Well,
something
it's
like
just kind
that.
of like Micah said. I think that it's not necessarily that it's like you're gonna go to hell because you had a glass of wine. I mean, there's a whole miracle in the Bible where Jesus turned water into wine for a wedding. You know what I'm saying? So it's like
That's
I
the one
know.
that they always go back
So
to.
and
Did he
so
actually create,
yeah.
alcoholic wine, or was it
So
grape
and
juice, or
exactly, but still,
people go
wine
back
is
and forth with
wine,
the
and when
debate.
you think of wine, you think that, And so I don't think it was. I think if that was the case, I think they would have insinuated that God made this holy wine that was not, So
Can we approach it from that though? Like, what do you guys think about that event where Jesus turned water into wine?
I think it was. I mean,
I think it's a different cultural time of what people drank. I mean, there wasn't a big variety of what to drink at that time, and per se, not to say that if Jesus was alive today and he was at a wedding and he changed water to wine, or he changed water to root beer, and everybody's like, "Yay!" But like,
golly, dude, I just realized this is making me sound like such like an alcoholic.
No,
it's
Guys,
not. It's
tell
not.
me I can drink.
No,
I need this.
No.
I need this.
No, but it is a good question. That
It's a good
I
question.
know, I'm
for a lot
just
of people.
joking.
For a lot of people, for Christians in
But I
general,
need this.
they're
tell me what I wanna
wondering.
hear.
It's if you're in the confines of your own home and you're with your wife, okay, and you want to have something to drink, I don't see a problem with that personally. Just me personally. Do I think I'm going to do that? Not necessarily.
Do you see a problem with that? Because I'm with you on the personal side, but do you see a problem with that biblically?
Biblically,
I don't know.
As in,
It
like
depends.
through the Bible.
Yeah,
It depends.
It's just I've only seen one way. I've grown up in a Christian home, like in a ministry kind of way. So my go-to answer is like I wouldn't do it. I didn't have have wine or alcohol at my wedding.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think just not coming from that mindset. If two Christians, they got married and they want to have a glass of champagne and they're married in their own home, I don't see that to be an issue. Now, is that something that you want to generationally, lift up in your home? Not necessarily if you're two Christians that are actually following the Bible wholeheartedly and you want to represent Jesus in your home to your kids. Yeah. I'm not going to marry my wife, have a glass of champagne every date that we have in our house and have it in front of my kids, because I don't want my kids to see me drinking anything like that, because it represents something that is going to further make them do something evil.
Them into something that could potentially harm them. You know?
Our dad's a hypocrite.
Yeah. It's like, I mean, it's like having a Sports Illustrated magazine, and it's a bikini edition, and you've got that. It's like it's not porn, okay? But if you have it there for your kids to see,
the way I would say it is,
it could lead
it's not
to
porn,
something.
but that'll do.
That will do the trick.
So
don't take much.
The moment that it's put there in front of them, and my kids walk in like, "Oh, what's this, Dad?" And they grab and they open it up. It can segue them into something.
It don't take
dark,
much at all.
I mean, and so same thing with alcohol. It's like I don't even want to have the opportunity.
So the way I see it is, my dad has just basically never had a drop ever since he's been like a teen, clean. But so like growing up, I had this weird Christian background of just like no, 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 but like also the common sense reasons of it.
Yeah.
But never really had any introduction to it at all. So like, didn't know all the names of the drinks and different things like that.
Same.
But I was also left to question it with an
Yeah.
open mind, kind of like I question things now.
Yeah.
To develop a relationship with like understanding it, because I also understood it from did Jesus turn water into
Water to
wine?
wine, yeah.
Like,
No,
was
no,
it alcoholic?
I believe he
Like,
did.
I don't know. I don't know if I want to believe that it was just grape juice or like a lessened
Yeah.
down, watered down
Yeah.
Well, I
wine.
mean, I think
Because they say he didn't just make like the wine once
Yeah.
they served it people once they're drunk. They said he made the good stuff.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
good
yeah,
stuff.
that's
They
what I'm
s-
saying.
Yeah,
They
That's the
specifically
yeah.
explicitly said that. So I'm
Yes.
like, okay, well let's question that. Let's like
Yeah.
look into it.
yeah.
So as I grew up, I've learned like, yeah, if you were a pastor, if you're a place of authority, and this is just my opinion,
Right.
you absolutely should not, because you would destroy your testimony.
Yeah.
You would destroy that thing that you're trying to instill in other
Because
people.
people assume, and they just.
But I
take it
do
one
think,
way.
just so like with my children, I don't want alcohol in the home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
same.
don't want my kids to see it. I don't want them raised up in it. I don't
Yeah.
want to be around it. I don't want the complications of it to be
Yeah.
involved with
Yeah.
my life in any
Yeah.
way, shape, or form.
I'm with you on that.
However, I do think once he is in high school, he's gonna get confronted with it. He's
Yeah.
gonna see it. He's
Oh
he's
yeah.
gonna know.
Same.
So I think it's like for me the way I would introduce it to my son is the same way that I believe. So it's like you should be able to like I don't want him to go to a party and like he could say no a bunch of times, but he says yes once and now he's experienced
Yeah.
it. And I'm not there and I don't even understand, what
Yeah.
he's going through.
Yeah.
And now he's getting my point of view, but then he's going to get the point of view when he's alone.
Mhm.
So I would much more rather approach it of we're gonna go sit down. We're gonna try this stuff. You might actually like some of it. You might not like some of it, and you
Yeah.
probably won't because you're just it's the thing that
Yeah.
alcohol does to you when you try it for the first time.
Yeah.
But to learn like, hey, here is a respect for it. Here's the dangers of it. When if you go to a friend's house and they want to start doing this,
Yeah.
you are now able to say, no, I don't drink. I don't
Yeah, have any
I don't have any
Yeah.
temptations.
Right.
I tried some with my dad.
Yeah.
I respect it from a distance. And when
Yeah.
I'm older, maybe I'll have some with my wife because we go on our honeymoon.
Yeah.
But I'm never getting drunk. What's the
Yeah.
point of getting drunk?
Exactly.
You're just gonna fall over and you're
Right.
not gonna remember the next morning if you're
Yeah,
that
I
far
never
gone.
understood it, Yeah.
Yeah. So I think there's like a respect to have with it, just like caffeine.
Yeah.
I basically caffeine overdosed. I
Yeah.
didn't actually caffeine overdose, but it was really bad.
Yeah.
Right.
Just like it can cause you anxiety.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah, big
it
time.
is a drug in of itself, is what
Yeah.
alcohol is. So that's kind of how I feel about it. As
Yeah.
like one, super easy. Just avoid it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that is the
Wisdom.
answer.
That is
Right.
the answer.
But like the nuanced version of it is like you need a healthy respect of it in
I
a
think
sense.
it's a boundary. You
Yeah,
create
you need a
boundaries for it.
very
for
strong
sure.
boundary. Like me personally, I just basically gave that answer. I just would say no for a
Yeah.
long time because that's how I was raised,
Yeah.
and I just completely avoided it because I knew it was the anser.
Yeah.
And I had the same debate from both sides of like alcohol's yes because
Yeah.
of Jesus, and I'm also a Catholic.
Yeah.
you know?
Right.
Not to make more jokes about other religions
Right,
like the
yeah.
Mormons, bring
Yeah,
them
yeah.
a bit, not to pull it back.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the Catholics are known for heavy drinking.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. they are.
But yeah, I think there's like a respect to it.
Yeah.
And did Jesus turn water into wine? I think he actually did.
Yeah.
I did.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
I do
I think he
so.
did too.
I do think he did. But he is the person who knows everything in of existence. And
Yeah.
do I think Jesus wanted to get somebody completely wasted and not able to walk out of their wedding?
No.
Absolutely not.
No,
No.
that's not his intention. Still a choice.
Yeah,
They
that's
have to
not
choose.
that's I can't even say that's a debate.
Yeah.
You
Right.
know?
No.
It's like you can debate if it's actual alcohol,
Yeah.
and there's things to get you drunk when
Yeah.
Jesus turned water into wine, but you cannot debate Jesus wanted to get somebody drunk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh
That's
yeah.
easy answer no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't know.
agree.
So that was a super long-winded answer.
No, it was
No. Yeah.
But that's just that's how I view it. It's a very like not one size fits all, but
Yeah.
there is an easy answer to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean,
Stay
I'll
clear.
say, for kind of what you were saying, I mean, I'm not saying introduce your kid to alcohol. I mean, per se, but I just say
sounds really bad when you put
yeah, but I know what you're saying, and to prepare them and say, hey, this is what it is, But for us, for Micah and I, Curly is a different story for him. But growing up in a home again, my dad got radically saved outside of when he was like an adult, 20-something years old, and so he lived that life, smoking weed and doing
Drinking,
everything,
going out,
yeah.
everything.
So his life was radically changed, profanity left overnight kind of deal. Whereas Micah and I grew up in a home that alcohol's not in the house, profanity's not in the house, all this stuff. So we grew up kind of like what you were saying. The answer was no. And so, but my dad kind of, by his integrity and set the example in the bar. I could go out right now. I'm 30 years old. I can go buy alcohol. I can go get wasted drunk right now. I can go smoke and everything.
No desire.
But I have no desire. And Dad didn't have to give me beer and say, hey, taste this so that He didn't have to do that. It was by the integrity and who he was. And I got to see my family, and no shame against my family, but there's people on my dad's side and even on my mom's side that drink, and I saw what it does to them, and it was like, okay, I've heard what happened to Dad, and I know that it was in the family, and I know that if it happened to my father, that it could happen to me. And so it was like, I don't even want any to partake in it.
I don't want it at all
because I don't want to know that version of Stephen Jr.
I guess the way I'm saying is like there's being sheltered can be a good thing, but it can be a really bad thing too.
Right.
And I guess I'm trying to say that I'm wanting to, like, in terms of my children, I want to shelter them to a degree,
Right.
so that way
Yeah.
they're not
see what you
so
mean.
sheltered
Yeah,
to
I
where
saw what you
like
meant.
they get hit with the world because
Yeah.
it's gonna happen,
Oh yeah.
and then it's just such a punch in the face that
Yeah.
it's like,
Reality
Yeah,
check.
and I think that's
Now they're
where
twisted.
you have to show them what it can do, but you don't have to they don't have to drink it per se. And I mean, of course, that's
Yeah.
you and being a dad and how you want to do things. But my dad never had to do that. He just showed me, hey, this is what it can produce.
Yeah.
And this is what it did in me. I almost lost my marriage over this. And so that was always in the back of my head. Again, at the end of the day, just like we discussed earlier, it's free will. God gives you free will.
Yeah.
You can choose whatever the heck you want to do. If you want to go get wasted drunk, go get wasted drunk. But we know the ramifications of that, and we can see it. And so your kid grows up in that and goes, okay, well, Dad said this and he's never done that. So if he makes the right choice, he would be sitting there going, okay, I want to do what Dad does. And I don't even want to partake in that either.
Another way the Bible says it is not that your life is just a living testimony, but you also know a tree by the fruit that it bears.
Exactly.
absolutely.
Right.
So like my dad actually told me a story of I forgot about it. I'm like, so I can't even confirm that I said this,
Mhm.
to be honest with you, but he told me I did, and as a dad, I'm sure he remembered it because I remember it. I would remember it if it was my son.
Yeah.
But we were on a cruise with a bunch of people. My parents are very heavy cruisers. They love cruises.
Yeah.
And I was in high school, and this one dude we were with, I think he was a little bit older, but he got so drunk that he fell over, and he ended up, you're on a cruise ship,
Yeah.
and
yeah.
apparently alcohol on a cruise ship makes your sea legs, that feeling of the
Yeah.
ocean and being
Mhm.
dizzy, even worse.
Yeah.
by
yeah,
the
I
way.
would imagine.
So he fell over. He hit his head on a table, and he actually ended up in the infirmary on the cruise ship for like the past like 2-3 days.
Oh, wow.
So he couldn't even enjoy
the cruise. Yeah. So
yeah,
it's like
3
really-
days of the 5-day cruise.
Yeah.
And I remember my dad told me, I told him, thank you, Dad, for not drinking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now I forgot that,
Yeah.
but as a dad, I'm sure I would never forget that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Because I was a high schooler at the time,
Mhm.
and I was like, man, like, because I was like really like, wow, this dude literally is in the bottom of the ship in the
Yeah.
infirmary.
Yeah.
He just
Out.
yeah
Yeah.
ruined his vacation.
Decommissioned.
right.
Right
I think
there.
it also is. It comes from people in your family. They'll get addicted to things. As you can see, like I've had family members that have been addicted to alcohol. Literally, that become alcoholics.
I think we all have
you know?
addictive personalities.
Oh
It's
yeah.
just what we
everybody.
choose to
Yeah.
latch
What
to.
you
Yeah, and
choose
so
to
it's
be
like,
addicted to. Yeah.
If my family generationally has been addicted to alcohol, which there have been a lot of alcoholics in both sides of our family, for me, I'm like, even at my age, and like Steven said, we never had our dad just be like, hey, drink this, so you know what it is. It was just more of a thing, like you said, the answer is to avoid it. And it was always, okay, if this is something that people in my family were addicted to multiple times, I'm just going to stay away from it
Yeah.
at
I
all
don't
times.
even want to give it
that
time
was-
of day.
Yeah, that was just always, and it also is like this purity about me that I've never even sipped alcohol to this day, and I'm
Stay
gonna
that
be
way.
27
I'm
years
the
old.
same way with
Yeah.
like cigarettes and smoking and
I've never,
marijuana.
I've never done any
so
of
I'm like,
it.
I'm not
So
gonna
I'm like,
introduce
all
it,
right,
and I don't
I'm
wanna
just
put
gonna
it-
Yet I
leave
want
it
to
at
do
that.
a episode on marijuana. So it's kind of
Right.
it's kind of fun.
Exactly.
But
Yeah.
still, that's still a cool, like
Yeah.
Yeah.
you're getting to see.
Yeah.
that.
But you get
I
to
don't
see that
need to-
perspective.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's different.
I
for
think
sure.
with me, it's the opposite.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I love talking. I feel like I've been saying, I said it like 4 times, that we talked about this and Face It. And
Yeah.
it's true because we talk about all this in Face It.
It's important for people to
And
hear. People have questions.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so we talked about fathers recently,
Mhm.
like within like the last like week.
Yeah.
And it's a verse where the Apostle Paul, and he's saying, imitate me as I imitate Christ.
Mhm.
And Jesus, and then there's a perfect picture where Jesus imitates the Father, right? Well, when you're young, when you're growing up in kindergarten or first grade, you get a little piece of paper and it's like, hey, who's your hero? Or who do you want to be when you grow up? And if you're a boy, a lot of times you're going to pick your dad,
Yeah.
right? And
have a father,
if
yeah.
you have a strong father, and so like you guys, y'all are imitating your father
Mm-hmm.
because he set the example.
Right.
But for me in my life, like my dad, I was 6 years old, and my dad would let me take a swig of his beer, of his
Yeah.
Coors Light, or where he's barbecuing and I'm watching him pour a whole Bud Light over the ribs because that it adds some kind of flavor, you know? And so I experienced that. Thankfully, I said, I don't like the taste of beer. I think
Right.
it's absolutely disgusting.
I also think it's disgusting.
I don't see the pleasure in it. But I experienced that at 6, 7 years old, where we're at our house and he's sitting on his tailgate and he's just drinking a cold one. He says, "Here, you want to try it?" Yeah, I'm 6, 7. I'm gonna do what my father's doing,
Yeah, you trust him.
and I
Yeah.
trust him, and I drink it. I love my dad to this day, and there was a time where he kind of was out of the picture, but he's coming back around now. And so, for me, I was imitating what my father was doing. But when I stepped into this relationship with Jesus, I'm gonna do what he wants me to do. I'm going to imitate him. And so when I have kids, I want my kids to imitate me.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to put them in a place where I'm like, hey, you want to try this? Because that's what my dad did to me. And I was introduced to it at a young age. I didn't struggle with it because I didn't like the taste of it, thankfully. But it's crazy how the spectrums and the differences of it were, hey, I wasn't introduced, but it was because they imitated their father.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And me, I could have easily imitated my dad and gone, hey, like I want to be like this. But my dad struggled with alcohol. He struggled with smoking cigarettes. He struggled with just drugs in a sense. And I could easily go down that path
Yeah.
if I wasn't following who Jesus is and the integrity of him.
Yeah, I think that's why I approach it from the same way that I would show my son.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I want him to be strong in that sense, and
Yeah.
and because he's gonna be introduced to it at some point.
Yeah.
But I want him to be able to know who he is enough to be able to say, yeah, my dad showed me that. My dad let me experience this.
Yeah.
I understand what it is,
I
and
don't-
I don't want to partake in any of
Yeah.
that. I want to avoid it.
Yeah.
Even if I am
Absolutely.
in like a business event or something like
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
or even if whatever relationship that my wife previously came from, maybe we are on a cruise and we want to have something, I don't want to.
Yeah,
I'd
same.
much rather have just like a glass of water.
Water.
Or,
And you'll
some
figure out, hey, I
you
can
know,
have a great time with a glass
high
of water.
Dude.
octane caffeine from 7 Brew. That's what I
Dude.
want.
And you
Yeah.
can make the
And then
business
have
deal
deep level
with a glass
thoughts.
of water. I mean, they're gonna obviously that person can
And
respect
then
you.
there is like the easy saying of like, just don't do it. I mean, like the Bible says, if your eye causes you to sin,
Yeah, get
Pluck it out.
pluck it
yeah.
out. And the whole, if you're looking at the speck in your brother's eye, but you got a log in your own kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
But I just feel like if I give that answer, if I was the viewer, that's a cop out. I want more.
Absolutely.
I want to
Yeah, I
understand
agree.
more.
Yeah,
you
well,
know?
hopefully we were able to give you guys a little bit more.
Something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For
yeah,
sure.
yeah, because like it is a deep question. It's always highly debated. The easy answer truly is,
Avoid it.
yeah, just avoid it.
Avoid it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like there's so
that
many
is
ways you
fine.
can go around debating, both sides.
Yeah.
You can convince yourself of literally anything if you really try.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Big time.
But yeah,
Find the answer you want.
it does come back to, especially with you guys, like, what does the Bible say about it?
Yeah. For
Yeah,
sure.
Exactly.
For sure.
But even that's still open up for debate. But whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, somebody will find a way to debate.
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
Pointing to the truth. If you believe the Bible's the truth, and
Then yeah.
I'm going to go with that.
Yeah, but this is fun. This was really fun.
Yeah,
This feels like this is the most YouTube thing I think I've ever done.
Yeah.
You know, to have like other people, and it's a podcast, right? It's like on Spotify and all that.
Yeah,
but like this is, you know, YouTubers like getting together and
I honestly
collabing
forgot
kind of
Yeah,
thing.
it's
we were
fun.
doing a
Yeah,
podcast.
like this is the most
Yeah.
YouTuber thing that I've ever done.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's
Thanks
been-
for having us.
Next
Yeah,
time
man,
we're
enjoy.
blowing up a car.
Yeah. Watch us destroy this wall.
Yeah.
I'm gonna drive this
I'm
motorbike
totally
through
in.
the
Next
sheetrock.
episode, we're destroying a wall.
Yeah.
I'm gonna build
Take
a
sledgehammers and just go at it.
It's just us for 30 minutes, just hitting a wall.
Yeah,
Dude.
I like it.
have to cover them cameras somehow.
That's it. You think we're joking? Just wait till you see the episode. We destroyed a wall. And it's 30 minutes long.
Yeah,
Of us hitting
just
the wall.
30 minutes.
Just talking and
breaking
hitting the
a
Talk
wall.
about release some anger, huh?
We'll do hot takes while
Go
you
to a rage
literally.
Dude, we'll do hot takes. We'll bring it back. Oh, man.
I
I don't know. Hot takes had some dicey questions in there.
Yeah, yeah.
We'll make our own questions.
Yeah, I'm not joking about this wall idea. I'm all
That-
in.
I'm all in.
It's
You
so
better
cool.
find somewhere for us.
Oh, dude, I'm going to build a wall. I am going to build a large
Do it.
concrete
Dang
and
Trump.
then make it.
Just
I'm
a
gonna
large...
build a wall.
That's good.
Yeah, there's so many.
awesome.
There's so many ways we can
Go with that.
Yeah, well, let's do
but I'm
it.
gonna leave that alone.
Dude, we're,
Yeah,
we're,
yeah.
we're
I am
in
go-
that.
I am going to build a brick wall. So we can just
Just start
it looks
chipping
like
away.
Maybe it'll be multi-layered wall. It'll be like
We'll
Yeah.
make your episode a little longer.
Yeah.
yeah. We'll have sheetrock.
Yeah.
We'll start with some
We'll do different types of
Hard.
walls.
Yeah.
Dude.
yeah. One's a paper wall, and then we could start with like different tools.
Or you could just make
Heck
one
yeah.
wall of cardboard and then just keep adding layers.
You know, we're
of
making it too
cardboard to where
complicated.
you
We just
can-
sledgehammers
You know what?
one
Yeah,
wall.
times you can
We're,
write
30
words
minutes.
We're
before it
thinking
gets
too
too-
much about this. We're
30 minutes, one wall.
sorry.
Sledgehammers.
getting into
That's
our
it.
YouTube creative minds right now. No,
Yeah.
just keep it simple.
Yeah. All right. Well, if you enjoyed this episode
Yeah.
and you are looking forward to the sledgehammer wall,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
like this video, subscribe, share it with your mother and your cousin
and
and
everybody else.
everyone else you know on the planet.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks for watching.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
I was just trying to, give that awkward silence before. We should have ended this a long time ago.
Yeah.